Attention bowlers, we are going to get started. Welcome back to Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. This is Greg Sawyer at Bryan Hebert. The match format is 5 strings with 14 points on offer. 2 points per string, 4 for total pinfall. If there's a tie, the points are evenly split. And here is our away bowler at home, Greg Sawyer. I'll explain that whole situation in just a moment. He dropped 3 on the first pitch. The second ball is nearly a spare with a wiggly 9-pin on the deck. So, yes, I'm Steve Kelly for the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Store, brought to you by 3 Ball Spare Conglomerate. Thanks for tuning in. This match was played on Tuesday, May 13th, 2025, at about 6:18 p.m. Eastern Time, local time, and that's a 9-box for Greg Sawyer to open up. Let's talk about a couple things. If you've never seen Candlepin bowling, I hope you enjoy the match today. This is a unique take on bowling from the heart of New England and Eastern Canada. The broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled. Do enable it if you enjoy this feature. Also consider the transcript feature if you're watching this from YouTube. Next, during the match, in addition to fun facts and anecdotes, I'll provide play-by-play action and scoring to the best of my ability. Keep an eye on the unofficial scoreboard on your screen. The bowlers maintain the official records separately for the league. The stream score is unofficial. And that was a head pin shot for Greg Sawyer and a 7 drop. He left the back right triangle, the 6-9-10. Second ball collides with the 9. So you might be wondering, you might have noticed I said Greg Sawyer at Bryan Hebert, yet we are at Boutwells Bowling Center. Funny you should ask about that question. So, due to the availability, or rather busy availability of the bowlers as well as Lakeside lanes, we made a unique exception this match to bowl Bryan Hebert's home match on the road at Boutwells Bowling Center, about 20 minutes-ish north from Lakeside lanes in Manchester. We just went to Concord, so Manchester comes to Concord this evening for purely scheduling-related purposes. There's a 1 drop for Greg Sawyer. So Greg Sawyer is at 18 after 2, in case you missed it. 2 9s in a row, 1 head pin shot for 2. And his first ball was on the 7-pin. Second ball is slightly to the right, 1-2-4. Let's see, what else? I will do my best to add chapters to the YouTube description so you can choose to jump to certain points in the games if that is your preference. I may occasionally pause to verify scores if things are out of sync, and I appreciate your patience when that happens. That's a 7-box for Greg Sawyer, 25 after 3. If you like this content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel for more exciting matches. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Appreciate you watching. Here's Greg Sawyer with a 9, a 9, and a 7 in the opening pitch of the 4th ball. That's a 3 drop. It's the 1, the 5, the 3, the 6, the 8, 9, 10. It's the 6-pack plus the 8. Now it's just a 6-pack. For a 10-box. Greg Sawyer, he has a season record of 76 and 162 after 17 matches this season. And Greg Sawyer will take a 9 on the leaving the 5-pin up there. That's 34 after 4. Greg Sawyer's home record is 56 and 70 on the season. When he's away, he's 20 and 92 with a season average of 94.42, a home average of 97.2, and away average of 91.3. High single 126, high series 547 with 12 strikes, 128 spares, 128 tens, a 32% perfect box percentage, and 8,026 seasonal total pins. Greg Sawyer with another 3 drop. That's another 6-pack plus a 7th can, a 7th beer. Buy 6, get 1. Greg Sawyer will tail off to the right on the second ball. Greg Sawyer is the 6th seed in Class E North Division 2 and the 11th seed in Class E North overall. There's a nice 10-box for Greg Sawyer. And that will be the first half for Greg Sawyer, 44 after 5. And it's still early. 1 for 5 on the head pin. No marks just yet, so we'll talk about those stats as some marks roll in, literally. Greg Sawyer's first ball average so far is 3.4. And that's half a game for Greg Sawyer. And now we're going to watch half a game of Bryan Hebert, who is our home bowler on the road on lane 23 at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert on the 1-3 pocket. A nice drop of 8. Just light enough to cause some splashes and spins. 2 in the 4. Spare leave. Bryan Hebert getting comfortable here with a mark and a spare for Bryan Hebert. All over that one. In fact, why don't we see that again, shall we? Watch that. Not a lot of power involved in either of those two balls, but, you know, you don't really need to. You don't really need that when you get the marks. So Bryan Hebert's working on a spare. And working on a spare he sure is. He'll get a 2-fill out of that. The 6-pin kind of flew through. Actually, 3-fill, excuse me. Spare pin fell in the back. And Hebert will leave the center diamond in the 9. He's looking at a 10 box, or something close to a 10 box. That's a 7 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 20 after 2, with an early lead. Early lead to Greg Sawyer's 18 after 2. Why don't we talk about Bryan Hebert real quick? He's the 5th seed in Division 2 of Class E North and the 10th seed in the wild card. He's 77-1, 61 for the season with 17 matches at a .48 win-loss ratio. At home, he's 27-85. Away, he's 50-76. That's a 3 drop for Bryan Hebert off the right back corner. I'll take a few more out off the left side. Bryan Hebert's season average, 92.88. Home average, 90.93. He bowls out of Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And away average of 94.62, and that will be a 6 box for Bryan Hebert on the third ball. Third ball and third box, 26 after 3. Bryan Hebert's high single is 118. His high series, 515. 19 strikes, 106 spares, 149 tens. 32% perfect box percentage, 7,895 total pins on the season so far, and he'll drop 2 off of the 4 and the 7. And like we talked about earlier, Bryan Hebert is number 5 in Class E North Division 2 and the 10th seed in Class E North overall. Here comes Bryan Hebert for the 10 box. He missed the mark, and he'll have a nice out. A nice out of Bryan Hebert for 35-4. We're on lanes 23 and 24 at Boutwells Bowling Center tonight. Pretty large-sized league going on other lanes. So we were kind of given the options of effectively lanes 1 through 4 or 23 and 24, and the bowlers chose 23 and 24. 6 drop for Bryan Hebert. 1-3-6-9. The 6-pin even slid a little bit closer to the array. Second ball punches. It's going to be the 1 and the 6-pin now to finish the half. And it'll be a nice 10 box as well for Bryan Hebert. Both bowlers with 10 boxes in the 5th. That's Bryan Hebert with a 45 half. Compare that to Greg Sawyer's 44 half. And that will be the half. It's a difference of 1. Bryan Hebert up by 1 over Greg Sawyer. Half a game in here on the ACST. Class E North in Concord, New Hampshire. Let's look at Greg Sawyer's stats again. So again, he's the 6th seed in Division 2 of Class E North and the 11th seed in Wild Card overall to give you an idea of the positionings and the rankings for all the bowlers. Greg Sawyer's just getting set up here, ready to fire. Ready, aim, fire. And that'll be a 4 drop of the opener of the second half for Greg Sawyer. 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 9. Greg Sawyer thinking happy thoughts on the spare shot. And he's on the pocket. Pins mix a little bit too cleanly around the 5 and the 9. And Greg Sawyer will take an 8. That'll be 52 after 6 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Here at Boutwells, while we're waiting on the pin setter, let's talk about Boutwells Bowling Center on State Street in Concord, New Hampshire. 24 lanes, 12 on each side. 152 North State Street, Concord, New Hampshire. Excuse me, I forgot the north. And I forgot the number. Yes, 12 lanes on each side, 24 lanes, and there is a splits. Actually, our first split of the match. It took a lot of boxes to get there, actually. 7 drop for Greg Sawyer. What is that? The 2, the 4, and the 10. Greg Sawyer on the spare attempt. He played the object pin. The wood around it kind of thwarted the attempt, but it was still a good attempt. Here at Boutwells Bowling Center, they use CompuScore, the semi-automatic scoring and lane resetting system. Boutwells Bowling Center is owned by the Dellis family. And they're super awesome. If you've never been to Boutwells in Concord, New Hampshire, you should come out up here and talk to Dino, Alex, Dimitri, the whole cast of the Dellises, all up here in Concord, New Hampshire. Boutwells, a long time ago, was formerly owned by the former Winds of New England WNDS Candlepin Stars and Strikes co-host Dan Murphy, and he passed away in 2022. Dan Murphy, if you've ever, watched Candlepin Stars and Strikes on WNDS, you know Dan Murphy. He was the co-host in the 90s iteration of that show, along with Doug Brown. And he also did a bunch of stuff for the Candlepin community as well. He ran the ICBA for a while. He was the chief instructor of the ICBA Candlepin Instructors School. But there's Greg Sawyer finishing that mess up for a 10 box. That's 72-8 for Greg Sawyer, and that score is confirmed. I know my first time at Boutwells Bowling Center was in 2008. It was for like a youth championship of some kind, and I know this because I took pictures of the occasion, and I bowled like a 3-something, so not a bad triple for first time there. But yeah, that's Boutwells. That's another 1 drop for Greg Sawyer on the 7 pin. And he's going to be pining for a spare. And pining he sure does. Is the final pin going to fall? Piece of wood races towards the 8. And now there's 4 pieces of lumber before that 8 pin. The 8 pin decided not to go down. It was touched and it wiggled, but nothing doing, and I could have told you that wasn't going to go. Greg Sawyer kicked the side of the piece of wood, and it helicoptered to the right. The ball was deflected to the left, leaving the 8 pin unscathed. That's a 9 box for Greg Sawyer. That is 81-9. Greg Sawyer is a busy gentleman, working for the State Fair, working in a food truck, I believe, from what I gleaned in conversations before the match began. And I know this is, I believe they're getting into their busy season for sure. That's a 6-pack and the 7 for Greg Sawyer. Missed the headpin to the right. Second ball takes out some stuff on the left. That's the 1-7-10-2-5. Mr. Sawyer. What is that? That's a 5 for Greg Sawyer, and he'll finish the first game with an 86. Went 2 for 10 on the headpin with 1 split. And that's the story of the first game for Greg Sawyer. Bryan Hebert with a 45.5. Can he make it to 86 or better to take points? Let's find out together, shall we? You're watching the ACST, the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class C North late season match at Boutwells Bowling Center. A home game on the road. Bryan Hebert, the home bowler, bowling away. Just wrap your head around that for a little bit. That's a 3-drop for Bryan Hebert to the left of the headpin. Back left Candlepin corner on the 4 triangle, knocked down. 1 diamond and the 6 triangle. Second ball off to the right, over correction, leaves the 1 and the 2. And Bryan Hebert will leave the 1 and the 2 for an 8 box, and that will be 53 after 6 for Bryan Hebert. This season, Bryan Hebert has had one of his matches with a shutout victory. That's where you take 14 points, all of 14 points. Bryan Hebert's had 3 matches this season with double-digit wins. He's been averaging 17 for 50 on the headpin and 8.45 splits for a match on average. And there's a 5-drop for Bryan Hebert, 4 horsemen right side, and the 7 is the spare leave. And I believe one of those pins even slid off a spot a little bit. Again, I think it was a 6 pin. Similar to lane 23. 3 pins go down the second ball, and it's the 1 and the 3. Center pocket, all that's left. 8 box or greater for Bryan Hebert. Here in the 7th. He'll pin it out for a 10. A great 10 out of you, Bryan Hebert. That's 63 and 7. Bryan Hebert is the 21st highest Class E average at 92.75. In his past 5 matches, Bryan Hebert has taken 27 points, averaging 5.4 points per match. There's Hebert on the head pin, and a strike. Goodbye. Strike for Bryan Hebert. Start out the 8th and work on fills in the 8th, and here's that shot again for Bryan Hebert. Great shot. All over the 1-2 pocket, the 6 pin falls last. And here's the follow-up to that strike for Bryan Hebert. Feeling a strike. Goes off to the right, starts with a Cleary. 5-drop Cleary on the right side. Feeling that strike fill, he's on the 2 pin, and that will be a 6 fill on the strike. It's the Cleary minus the 2, 1479. And he'll take a 7 box. That'll be 86 and 9 for Bryan Hebert. That's 86 and 9 for Bryan Hebert, so that's definitely at least 1 point for Bryan Hebert so far, and barring no 0 boxes, he'll take another point, courtesy of the 10th frame. Let's find out. Is it 1 point? It is 1 additional point for Bryan Hebert. That's a 3 drop for Bryan Hebert. On the head pin, leaves the 4 and the 7 on the spare shot. And for the final frame, wow, that 4 pin's really not going to drop, is it? It's going to be 95 for Bryan Hebert. And 95 is confirmed. So Bryan Hebert will take the first game, 95 to Greg Sawyer's 86. A difference of 9 in the first game. Bryan Hebert with that 1 strike, particularly in the 8th frame, made all the difference. 2 for 10 in the headpin for Bryan Hebert, no splits. Greg Sawyer, 2 for 10 in the headpin with 1 split. So still plenty of bowling to go today. We have 4 more games to go. Bryan Hebert 4.8 on the first ball averaging, while Greg Sawyer is averaging 3.3 on the first ball. Take a walk with me down to the second game here. Welcome to the second game. It'll be Greg Sawyer up first. Greg Sawyer, the away bowler. While we have some time, I'll show you his stats again. So again, Greg Sawyer, 76 and 162 with 17 matches played. The 6th seed in E North Division 2, the 11th seed in Class E North overall. Greg Sawyer has had 3 matches this season with double-digit wins. He on average goes 20.55 for 50 on the head pin every match, with 11.73 splits per match. With his home house here is at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. He's taken 26 points in his past 5 matches. That's an average of 5.2 points per match. And here he is, Greg Sawyer, ready to fire. Mr. Sawyer to the left of the head pin, and 6 go down. That's the 4 horseman right side. That's the spare leave. 1, 3, 6, 10. And Sawyer on the horseman. He'll take the 3 and the 6. He'll leave the 1 and the 10. And that'll be a 9 box for Greg Sawyer to open up the second game. That's a 2 drop for Greg Sawyer on the to the left of the head pin. And he's just off to the left. And Sawyer on the third ball, he'll leave the 2 and the 5 for an 8 box. That's 17 after 2 from Mr. Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer has at least one match at or over 500 this season, and I was talking to him about that match earlier today before the match started, and he was really proud of that one. It was 546 off the top of my head, without cheating or looking at any match score sheets. I believe he said 546, and that was a great match. You know, throwing over 500 is no small feat for sure. That's a 6 drop for Greg Sawyer. It's a split, 5-7-10-3. He'll foul one out with a -1. Caught a pin in the gutter, and caught a pin on the deck. We call that little shot a foul. 5-7-10 for Greg Sawyer for a potential 9 box. It'll be an 8 box with 1 pin standing and the -1 applied. That's 25 after 3 for Greg Sawyer. Here comes Greg Sawyer. He's on the pocket. Awkward array of 7 drops. And I'm still mentally processing that too. The 6-pin really took a ride, but it didn't fall. Something about the 6-pin and just not really falling, just doing a lot of sliding motions. Well, it's a 6-7-9 for Sawyer. He'll catch the left of a piece of wood in front of the 6 and only take the 6. It's the 7 and the 9 now for an 8, 9, or 10. And he'll bulldoze one more for a 9 box. That's 34 and 4 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer, in his past 5 matches, he's totaled 2,446 pins in total pinfall, averaging 489.2 per match. His longest streak of strings at or over 100 this season has been 5. Greg Sawyer on the pocket, and he'll split 7. What is that? That's the 3, 7, and the 9. The 3 and the 9 sleeper configuration stack is the issue. But there's some wood, it might work. But the wood actually only scoops the 3. The 7 and the 9 are not involved in that skirmish. So Greg Sawyer on a streak of 3 headpin shots in a row, but also 3 splits in a row. That'll be an 8 for Mr. Sawyer. And that will be a 42 after 5 for the man himself. Greg Sawyer averaging 4.5 on the first ball. If he goes all strikes from here on out, he has a max game of 192. It's now Bryan Hebert's turn to respond here in the first half of the second game. If you're just tuning in, you haven't missed much. We're just still more or less at the top of the second game, second quarter. Here's Bryan Hebert. And he'll drop 6 to the right of the headpin. 1, 2, 4, 8. Oh, and he was trying to catch the right side of the headpin, but just couldn't quite get the millimeters to get over there. And there's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert in the first. And the 42 half for Greg Sawyer is confirmed. Bryan Hebert in his past 5 matches has totaled 2,364 pins in total pinfall, averaging 472.8 pins per match. There's Bryan Hebert with a headpin shot. He has spared the split stat with a late falling pin. That's the 3-6-10 for Mr. Hebert. Hebert for the spare. Thought about it a little bit too much. Would have been a great headpin shot had it connected. But sometimes that just happens. Bryan Hebert will take one more out. Who's on the object that time, but punched a little full. That's 18 after 2 for Hebert. An early advantage of 1 pin over Greg Sawyer, 17 after 2. Similar to the previous game. Let's see where we go from there. Bryan Hebert has had one of his 17 matches at or over 500 in total pinfall. His longest streak of strings at or over 100 has been 3 this season. There's 1 drop for Hebert on the 7 pin. Bryan's longest streak of matches at over 500 has been 1 so far this season. Longest winning streak of greater than 7 points per match has been 2. Hebert for the 5 or greater box on lane 23, and that will be 7. That's 25 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. Keying in that 7 box. 25 after 3. Bryan Hebert averaging 3.38 points per home match and 5.56 points per away match. Here's Bryan Hebert to the right of the head pin. It's a 5 drop so far. 1, 7, 10, 2, 8. Your winning lottery numbers for the evening. And Hebert will take the 9 and the 10 on a piece of wood. Leaves the 1, 2, 7. And that will be a 7 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 32 after 4. Down by 2 to Greg Sawyer's 34 after 4. With 1 to go before we return to the opposite bowler. Hebert's thrown a strike and a spare so far this match. He's on the pocket there. He'll split 7. 4, 6, 2. And Hebert will punch 1. Difficult shot to convert. So both bowlers markless in the first half, so they're still relatively even. There'll be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert, and that will be a 41.5. A difference of 1 between our two bowlers here halfway through the second game, and a difference of 8 in the total. Bryan Hebert currently at 8 in the total, or plus 8 in the total, 136 to Greg Sawyer's 128. And I don't need it, I'm good. But yes, the short of it all is the difference in the totals is very low. Greg Sawyer at +1 in the game. Bryan Hebert at +8. Sorry, there's some off-screen funniness going on. No worries. So Greg Sawyer is going up to step up for quarter 3 of the second game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. And he's off. Off he sure is. Greg Sawyer will take a few off of the first ball, and that's the 6 down specifically. 1, 3, 8, 9. Sawyer will punch 8, or punch the 8. The is operative in that sentence. 1, 3, and 9 for Greg Sawyer for a 10 box. And he'll punch 1, and that'll be an 8 for Greg Sawyer. That's 50 in 6. Thanks for tuning in to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. We're having a great time here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire, the capital of New Hampshire. Capital Bowling. Greg Sawyer will take down 6 on his first pitch. That's the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 for Mr. Sawyer. Some call that the 4 horsemen. This is the 4 horsemen left side in particular. The 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 version of the leave. 2 different versions of it. And he'll shave 3 off the 4, missing the object pin, and the only pin that's left on the plate is the object head pin. Fancy that. Don't you love when that happens? Recently, when I played against Nate Lees at Exeter Bowling Lanes in Exeter, New Hampshire, I found that both of us were encountering that dilemma quite a bit, where had some spare leaves where you missed the object, but just took everything, and the object is the last pin standing. And I don't know why that happens so often. It's just a bizarre reminder to hit your object pins, but, you know, I digress. There's the 1 diamond, the 7, and the 10 for Greg Sawyer. That's a 4 drop. Greg Sawyer averaging 4.4 on the first ball. And we're just waiting on something down there. I'm not sure what. Hey, if you're new to my stream and want to know what's going on with some of the terminology, symbols, colors, or whatever the heck it is, got you covered here. The head pins and splits are the two lights to the left and the right of the score towers. Head pins are green, splits are red. Our symbols are the 4 triangles in the corner. That array is a double strike symbol. The filled square is a strike. The triangle is a spare. And this is the tricky one, because in 10-pin it can sometimes mean a strike, and some automatic score systems can also mean a strike. In my streams, the X will mean 10. Just to give you an idea. And here's an example game where people bowl out of their minds in the 5th game. At the bottom in the italics are the games 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, followed by the total. That's the general idea, and I think we should be good to go here. Greg Sawyer with a spare leave, the 1 diamond, the 7 and the 10. And he'll take all but the 2. He'll lightly tap the object pin in a piece of wood. And he's left with the 2 pin. And there's a 10 box for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Modern day warrior of mean stride. Today's Greg Sawyer, mean pride. And a guest appearance from Dimitri Delis, who just ran back to do some lane maintenance. And here's Greg Sawyer. First ball drops 6. 4 horsemen right side this time. So this match is, I want to say the final. It's definitely the final match for Bryan Hebert. I've somewhat lost. It's also the final match for Greg Sawyer, actually, for that matter. They're both in their final match. They've bowled 17 matches apiece in an 18-match season. Greg Sawyer misses the spare on the second ball. And the third ball will be the same situation. That will be a 6 box for Greg Sawyer, 76 and 9. We'll finish that thought also. So up in the upper left, you'll see a little mini map. And that will include the bowler initials, as well as the points, the match total, game total, and in the center gray area is what game we're on, as well as the match total lead and the game total lead. The differences, basically. If you do the math, it'll all math out. There's a 7 drop and a split for Greg Sawyer. 4, 6, and the 3. No wood. Oh, and Sawyer just a little bit to the left of the object 3 pin. If he had connected to the left of the 3, he would have definitely gotten a bounce of the 3, probably off the sidewall to take the 6, and maybe the ball would have deflected to the 4. Depending on velocity, but I guess we won't know. That'll be a 7 for Greg Sawyer. And he's done game 2, and that will be a 2-game total of 169 with that 83 in the second game. He's 4 for 10 on the head pin, and that's 4 splits for Greg Sawyer. First ball average, 4.5. And Greg Sawyer is still hunting for marks right now, so we'll see how that goes. Overall, he has 6 head pin shots and 5 splits. Bryan Hebert, 2 marks on the board. Let's see what Bryan Hebert can do in the final quarter of the second game here on the ACST. And here he is, Bryan Hebert, on the 1, the 2 pocket, and almost takes a strike. The 5 pin is left on the deck. With wood. Huh. And this is this'll bring to mind a little anecdote from Sunday. Bryan, if you're watching this later, my apologies, but I will bring this up. Bryan Hebert had a 1-pin leave in the Sunday Mixed League at Lakeside Lanes, and I believe he had the piece of wood, and it was either play it direct or play the wood, and I think he played the wood, and things did not end well, but hey, it worked out there. That's a spare for Bryan Hebert, 51, and a bonus in 6. At least I think that was Bryan Hebert who had that leave. It was either him or his dad, Bryan Hebert Sr. Forgive me if I get them mixed up. Purely from memory again. And Hebert's to the left of the head pin on the fill. That's a 4 fill. That's the 4 horse on the right side, the 7 and the 9. The shot with no name. Hebert on the pocket. Oh, it looked good. The head pin even kind of careened towards the 7, but nope, not enough juice in the bottle to take the 7 pin. Juice in the orange, juice in the lime, juice in the, I don't know. 10 bucks of Bryan Hebert, 65 and 7. Just pending. 65. Yes, confirmed for Ryan Hebert. They're just doing some catch-up down there on the scoreboard down there. Here comes Bryan Hebert on the pocket. And he'll split 8 after the pins mix. That's the 5 and the 10. Five and the 10 for Bryan Hebert. Oh, and he'll sail through the goalposts, slightly to the right of the target wood. For a 10 box now. Ball looks better. And trip it. It's tripped. That's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert, 75 in 8. And some might call that a Paul Grant special, complete miss of a spare shot on the second ball, and you get it on the third. That's a $1 donation to Candlepins for cancer per occurrence. And that reminds me, we'll talk about Candlepins, number4cancer.com. A little bit more down the road in the match. Hebert to the left of the head pin. Pins are still mixing, and a 7 drop, a generous 7 drop. It's a 1-3-7 leave. Oh, and Hebert will sail to the left of the head pin. And that will become an 8 box for Mr. Hebert. He's at 83 in 9, tied with Greg Sawyer. Again, we're at a situation where Bryan Hebert has 1 additional box to pull ahead, and barring no 0 boxes, he will take an additional point. He already has 1 point for this game. And I feel like I'm repeating myself because I said this exact same scenario in the previous game. Headpin shot, 7 split. And 4008 are the winning 50-50 numbers here tonight. 5, 8, 10 for Bryan Hebert on the spare. No wood. Plays the 5 a little bit too full. And he'll finish with an 8. He will take the second game with a 91. 95-91 for Bryan Hebert. 86-83 for Greg Sawyer. That's a 2-game total of 186 for Bryan Hebert and a 2-game total of 169 for Greg Sawyer. So Bryan Hebert currently with 4 points. Greg Sawyer at none. And Bryan Hebert leading the total by 17 and took the second game by 8. And I have been informed that we're going to take a quick TV timeout. So we will be back in just a moment or two. Just, you know, the usual fun stuff that we do during bio breaks. So we'll be right back. We'll be right back with you in just a moment. All right, folks, we're back. Never thought that we'd have TV timeouts in a bowling game, but here we are. So again, to give you a recap, we're just at the end of the second game, about to move on to the third game. 169, Greg Sawyer, 186, Bryan Hebert. Greg Sawyer with an 86 and 83 in the second game, Bryan Hebert 95 and 91 in the second game. And we're off to the third game here on the ACST. Steve Kelly on the call again. Great to have you along. And Greg Sawyer with a 4-drop to start off. 4 horsemen right side, the 7 and the 9. And he's on the object pin, but he leaves the 3, the 6, and the 9. Bit of a light hit and a bit of a spready splash. That's an official term. Copyright. Trademark. And Greg Sawyer will take a 9. 9 after 1 for Greg Sawyer. So Greg Sawyer still fishing for marks as of the third game. And I'll punch the 2 pins for a half Worcester. Start of the second frame. That's a punch of the 2 and the 8, specifically. So it's the left side half Worcester version of the half Worcester. Oh, and he'll punch the 1 and the 5. A spread eagle shot. Plus a half Worcester. So he's 4 pins down and 5 pins down and 5 pins up. Actually, the 9 pin fell along with that. So ignore everything I just said about dropping 2, and that's a 5 box for Greg Sawyer, 14 after 2. Greg Sawyer, he averages 2.5 points per away match and 5.5 points per home match. He's the away bowler this evening, but he's bowling at home for the explanations explained earlier. 2 drop on the first ball, 4-7. With the recent temporary closure of Leda lanes, a lot of bowlers are moving to other bowling alleys in the area to bowl summer leagues and whatnot, so that will mean that other bowlers nearby Leda lanes, such as Lakeside lanes, and actually in a way Boutwells as well, but Boutwells is a little less busier than Lakeside in terms of availability, but Lakeside is getting at capacity when it comes to league availability and just overall availability, so that's the overall point I'm trying to say here is due to all those circumstances, we're here at Boutwells for the final match of the season for these 2 bowlers. Neither bowler is a stranger to Boutwells, of course. Greg Sawyer bowls out of here. Bryan Hebert and myself have bowled out of here countless times over the years. It's a 1 drop for Greg Sawyer on the 7 pin. Nearby Boutwells is also, well, I'll put nearby in quotes, is there's also Exeter Bowling Lanes in Exeter, New Hampshire, as well as Bowl-O-Rama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And Greg Sawyer will almost convert that for a spare. Wiggly 4. Wiggly doesn't mean down, though. It stays up. 1 left for Greg Sawyer for 10. We'll take a 9. That's 32 and 4 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer in his past 5 matches, 4 strikes, 41 spares, 51 tens. It's a cool average of 8.2 spares per match and 10.2 tens per match. 18 points he's taken in the 5 most recent away matches, averaging 3.6 per match. There's a 6 drop and a split for Greg Sawyer in the 5th frame. That's the 7, the 10, the 3, and the 6. In Greg Sawyer's past 5 home matches, he's taken 30 points, averaging 6 per match. And he'll take 1 off of the array of splitted pins. Splitted. Just making up words now. And Greg Sawyer will make that an 8 box. And after 5, Greg Sawyer is at 40. 9-5-9-9-8 for Mr. Sawyer. He's 1 for 5 in the headpin with 1 split, 7 headpin shots overall, 6 splits overall, averaging 3.6 on the first ball. That 40.5 for Greg Sawyer brings him to 209, 2.5 games in at the halfway point here on the ACST. And now it's Bryan's turn to catch up. Bryan Hebert currently at a shutout of all the points at the moment. Bryan Hebert on the head pin, a little full. It'll be a 6 split. That's the 4, 6, 3, 4, 6, 3, and 10. And Bryan Hebert will punch the 6. The 3, the 4, and the 10. Or what's left down there. Third ball for a 10. That will be a 7 box. That'll be a fouled off into the channel, catching the 10. So 7 after 1 for Bryan Hebert. In case you missed it, Greg Sawyer threw a 40.5. Bryan Hebert 8 for 21 on the head pin with 4 splits. Greg Sawyer 7 for 25 on the head pin with 6 splits. Greg Sawyer 3.6 on average for the first ball. Bryan Hebert 5.4 on average for the first ball. That's a 4 drop for Bryan Hebert to the right of the head pin. That's the 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, and 10 for Bryan Hebert. Let's see, what more can I tell you about Bryan Hebert? In his past 5 matches, 10 strikes, 32 spares, 39 tens. Bryan Hebert missing the target object pin. He leaves the 1 and the 10 on the deck. In Bryan Hebert's past 5 home matches, he's taken 13 points. That's an average of 2.6 per match. On the road, he's doing a lot better with 34 points in his past 5 aways, averaging 6.8 per match. And there is a 9 box for Bryan Hebert, leaving the 10 on the deck. 16 after 2 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert has 14 of the 17 matches without double-digit wins. He had a bit of a difficult season this season, but you know, that just happens. I know I'm right there with him because I also didn't make the playoffs in the ACST this season. It's sometimes feast or famine. I know, that's kind of a shocker. My apologies to anyone who didn't know that spoiler, but yeah, sorry, didn't make the playoffs. Bryan Hebert taking 2 more off, leaving the 1, the 3, and the 7. For the 10 box. Be another 7 box. Bryan Hebert, that's 23 after 3, tying Greg Sawyer's 23 after 3. Staying in pace. Last time versus Greg Sawyer, Bryan Hebert took 2 points. Most recently, Bryan Hebert faced Mark Milliken in round 14, taking 1 point with a 471 series. With an 86, 99, 91, 108, and 87. 1 strike, 6 spares, 11 tens in that match against Mark Milliken. That was a 6 drop for Bryan Hebert. That's a 1, 3, 4, 7. Second pitch. Oh, he was on the pocket. But the head pin kind of got stuffed by the sidewall. Kind of completed its bounce a little bit early before it could bounce back or fly back to the 4 and the 7. And Bryan Hebert will take a 10 in the 4th. That's 33 and 4 for Bryan Hebert. 1 to go before he sits, and we say hello to Greg Sawyer once more. Right here on lane 23. Take 1 on the first ball. That's a 25 box first ball average of 4.9 for Bryan Hebert. Greg Sawyer was at 3.6. Same point in the match. And Hebert will leave the 1, the 3, the 9, the 10 on the second ball. And he'll leave 2 on the deck for an 8. That's 41 for Bryan Hebert, a lead of 1 in the game. 41 to Greg Sawyer's 40. And in the total, Bryan Hebert holds on to it by 18. 227 to Greg Sawyer's 209. We're officially at the halfway point of this match, 2.5 games in, and we still have a whole other 2.5 games to go here on the ACST. Say hello to Greg Sawyer once again. We're at Boutwells Bowling Center having a great time here in Concord, New Hampshire at North State Street. If you're just tuning in, this is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. It's a season-long series of one-on-one Candlepin matches played between challengers organized into classes and divisions competing for playoff contention. This is a regular season match. We are just about to start playoff season. Some matches already have been bowled, actually, and some are being scheduled. They're all kind of asynchronous, and they kind of happen based on bowler and bowling alley availability. So those should be broadcasted kind of throughout. I think we have a bunch this weekend, and I think I will be at least calling one relatively soon. It will be JT Linnaeus and Paul Mativier. I believe that's my next one on deck, and that will be at Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury. Or no, sorry, Exeter Bowling Lanes in Exeter, New Hampshire. Excuse me. So I believe that will be next Monday, or the next Monday from this broadcast, at least. That's a 6-drop for Greg Sawyer in the splits. On the head pin there, that's the 3-5-7-8. First pair. And he's just a little bit off the target pin. It will connect with 2 in the back, leaving the 2 in the 7. So now Greg Sawyer against the 2 in the 7 for 10 box. And that will be an 8 for Mr. Sawyer. That's 48 after 6. 2 for 6 on the head pin this game with 2 splits. Both of those head pin shots have been splits. He has 8 head pin shots and 7 splits. And a split, in most cases, is only counted when the head pin is down. You can get a split if you haven't collided with the head pin directly with the ball, but it doesn't happen all that often. And in this case, all of Greg Sawyer's splits have been associated with head pin shots. Only one head pin shot without a split. That's the TLDR of that conversation. Oh, and he's on the pocket there. Drops 8, splits 8, 7-10 split. Looked great on paper. That looked like a strike ball, to be fully honest with you. Piece of wood kind of center left of the plates. It might not be super useful to take the 7 or the 10. It's going to be a doozy. And yep, that was precisely what I thought was going to happen. Greg Sawyer played that piece of wood, and it deflected too early. The ball didn't touch anything. The pin slid out of play. And Sawyer will leave those on the deck for an 8-box, 56 and 7 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. So the ACST, also known as the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, it's again a season-long league, kind of like a travel league of sorts. If you're generally aware of how the NFL works in terms of the divisions and leagues and playoffs, you're going to be right at home with the ACST. A lot of the similar rules apply here as do there. Each matchup is a 1v1 match. It's a scratch match. No handicaps or assisted point values. There's an available 14 points in every match of the ACST. You can get 2 points for that are awarded to the winner of each game. The cumulative total of grand total pinfall after 5 games awards an additional 4 points, 2 if a tie. So if you, example, win the first, second, and third strings, lose the fourth and fifth, and win total, you receive 10 points of 14. Greg Sawyer leaving the pile of 5 on the right, and that will be a 7. That's 63 and 8 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. New things this year in the ACST in this particular season, we added classes E and F to the league. It's a growing league. The previous year we only had classes A to D, so it grew by that much. And we'll see what the next year brings, because we're right at the tail end of the 2024-2025 season here. That'll be a 6-drop and a banana split for Greg Sawyer. That's the 4-6-7-10. 4-6-7-10 leave. Spread equal minus the 2 and the 3. Paul Grant ordained Casey McCool as the official curator of that shot, the banana split. And Greg Sawyer will punch the 7 and leave the rest of the dessert on the plate of lane 24. That'll be a 7-box for Greg Sawyer. That's 70 and 9. 239 grand total for Greg Sawyer with 1 box to go before he finishes the 3rd game here. He was almost perfect on the head pins in the second half except for the 8th frame, and also, again, perfect for the split, so he made a nice little exclamation point on the left and right sides of the score towers. And Sawyer missing the head pin there. 3-drop. Took the right back Candlepin corner. 10 for 30 on the head pin, 9 splits. It's just a little bit to the right of the object pin. And that's the left side 4 horsemen, 1, 2, 4, 7 for Mr. Sawyer. That'll be an 8 for Greg. a 78 third game and a 3-game total of 247 for the away bowler, Greg Sawyer, the away bowler at home at Boutwells Bowling Center. 3.9 averaging on the first ball. Again, 10 headpin shots and 9 splits. Just getting kind of a little bit beat up in terms of the splits to headpin ratio. And I know I've been there plenty of time. So here's Bryan Hebert on lane 24. And he'll also take a right rear corner, Candlepin corner. You should also check out Candlepin Corner on YouTube and Facebook. They also do some great video content and streaming and whatnot. Many different events over there. Hebert on the spare shot, he'll leave 4 on the deck. 6 down, 4 up. And a 6 box, it shall be. That's 47 in 6 for Bryan Hebert. It's a difference of 1. He's only down by 1 in the 6th frame against Greg Sawyer. 78 will get him 1 point. And more than 78 will be 2 points. And Hebert seemed to be magnetizing to the right of the lane. And he'll punch there. 3 down so far. Half Worcester on the second ball, preceded by a shot on the 10 pin for the first ball. And he'll make a 6 box out of that. A decent out. That's 53 and 7 for Hebert. -3 to Greg Sawyer's 56. Hebert can go to 143 if he strikes out from here on out. Let's watch. Off to the right, punches 2. 6 and 9. Nice. For the spare bid. On the pocket. Much better ball. 5 and the 3. It'll be an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 61 and 8. 2 frames to go. Oh, and he'll take a shot on the 4 pin. 1 drop. Some might call that a lemon drop. And Hebert, though, on the lemon drop, that's what he thinks of the lemon drop, almost takes the rest of the ray out. Leaves the 6. 6 was touched. It was hit. You were hit, 6 pin. There's the 10 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 71 and 9. Retaking the lead by 1 in the 3rd game. Bryan Hebert has taken every game so far. So instead of a difference of being tied in the 9th frame, he's actually just down by 7 at this point. And there's 6 pins right there. 1 pin to tie. More than that to win. Bryan Hebert's averaging 4.6 on the first ball, 30 boxes in. Oh, and Hebert with a 6, still a 6 drop on the second ball. And there's the 3rd game for Bryan Hebert with a 10. That's 81 after 10. So Bryan Hebert's still perfect so far. 6 points for Bryan Hebert. 3-game total of 267 for Bryan Hebert, plus 20 in the total. 267 for Bryan Hebert, 247 for Greg Sawyer. Bryan Hebert taking the 3rd game by 3. Greg Sawyer has more headpin shots than Bryan Hebert. 10 to Bryan Hebert's 8. But Bryan Hebert with many fewer splits. 9 splits for Greg Sawyer, 4 for Hebert. All right, let's take a nice walk down to game 4 here on the ACST, and we'll have Greg Sawyer on deck first. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, brought to you by 3-Ball Spare Conglomerate. Appreciate you watching. If you want to check out the other stuff I do on YouTube, I run 3-Ball Spare on YouTube. Check out all those great other matches and highlight reels, YouTube shorts, you name it, all over there on YouTube, particularly on 3-Ball Spare. That's a 7 drop for Greg Sawyer. It's the 5, the 7, and the 8. Today's YouTube short on 3-ball spare features Peter Crawford Jr. with a great shot. It was an awkward split of 2 pins on 2 different sides of the plate, but DJ Petey Pete made it look real easy. It was a 2-6 split, if I'm not mistaken. And there's Greg Sawyer with a 9-box. 9 after 1 for Mr. Sawyer. We also have some other fun on that channel, such as you get to watch some of the most insanely infuriating shots that I got during Ray's Easter Classic at Lido Lanes. And, you know, when you bowl 20 games in a day, you're bound to get almost, you know, a lot of different combinations of shots, both good and bad. And that's actually the first time I streamed a tournament for the entirety of the tournament, and that was a 13-hour tournament. And I streamed all 13 hours of it and bowled in it, so that was an experience. It was fun. It was actually a lot easier to stream it and bowl it than I thought it would be, but a whole lot of fun. It was great to bowl next to a whole bunch of awesome bowlers, such as Justin Waters, Chris Bovair, JJ Tarigny, Dominic Palladino, Jeff Ring, Alana Brown, and everyone else who was bowling around me. It was great experience. Not my first DJ Classic. I've bowled, I think, 5 other ones prior to that, so no stranger to 20-string tournaments, but that one was special at Lido Lanes in particular, just because Lido Lanes is just looking to move to a new location, so hopefully they'll be right back up and running for the new location for the Easter Classic in 2026. And that is what appears to be a 4-drop for Greg Sawyer. Sawyer always looking good. And there's a mark for Greg Sawyer. And he was happy about that one. I'll tell you why, because that's his first mark of the match. It actually took all this long to get to that point, but look at that. That was a great shot. He was pumped about that one. And actually, while the pin setter is still going, we can actually watch that twice. Yeah, he was just all over the pocket, just pounded the pocket for the spare on that. Great shot by Greg Sawyer. Well-earned spare. Only took 33 boxes to get there. Greg Sawyer. Well, he gets a merciful fill. It's a 4-fill. Missed the pocket, and it was looking like it was going to be a 2-fill, but got an extra mix. So that's 32 and 4 for Mr. Sawyer. And it looks like it's almost a mirror image version of the previous shot he just got for a spare, and it turns into a right side 4-horseman shot. It was the center diamond, the 6 and the 10. Now it's the 1-3-6-10. Greg Sawyer, nice 10-box and a good out. I think he's finally getting into a bit of a rhythm here. He's at 42 after 4. 1 box to go before he sits, and Bryan Hebert goes back up. Greg Sawyer's 11 for 34 on the head pin with 10 splits so far this match. Greg Sawyer can play a match at 222 if he can strike out all the way to the end here. Greg Sawyer on the 1-3 pocket. It's a 7 split. It's the 2, the 7, and the 8 for Mr. Sawyer. And that looks like that's going to be a pretty good spare leave. You just have to hit anywhere within the vicinity of those pins, and that's what he's going to do precisely. That's 52 after 5, and a bonus for Greg Sawyer. 2 marks this half. Now he's getting fired up. Look at that. 52 and a bonus. His worst box was a 9. Watch that shot again. Check that out. All over it, and that was his other spare. Actually, no, that was the first spare. I must have missed that, or I must have not pressed the button. Oh, well, that first spare was still also awesome to watch, so you know what? I'll allow it. Bryan Hebert on the wile. He drops 9, pounds the pocket. Just the 6-pin down there. On the single, just off to the right. And Hebert will leave that on the table for a 9. 9 after 1. Before I forget, I promised you I'd talk about Candlepins for Cancer, and here I am fulfilling that promise. So check out candlepins4cancer.com, run by Al Johnson and Paul Grant. That's Al Johnson in the blue and Paul Grant in the red. Great charity run by great, awesome folks. The two of them MC the whole operation. Candlepins for Cancer is not only a donation platform for those in the Candlepin bowling community in need of cancer treatments in particular. Fantastic charity, and they've paid out to a lot of folks that have really been in a bad place in a lot of spots. So, you know the idea. So, but it's more than just a charity. It's also a bowling tournament. Their recent ladder series was here at Boutwells Bowling Center. So, so if you're into donating, you can donate if you want, but you can also sign up for one of the roll-offs, and you can. I'm sorry, I'm yapping a little bit here. But yeah, you get the idea. Candlepins for Cancer. Bryan Hebert, 16 after 2. Dropping 7. What is that? The 1-3-7. And Hebert, oh, he almost goes. He connects with the 1-3 pocket right in the spot where he needed to connect. But on the right side of that pocket, it's a little bit riskier. If you go for the Brooklyn side of that pocket, it probably would have been more of a guaranteed spare. But that will be a 9 for Bryan Hebert, 25 after 3. All right, Bryan Hebert, box number 4, 25 after 3. He's on the pocket there, but splits 6. 4, 6, 3, and the 10. Favorable Ishwood behind the 3. I believe we're just waiting on the ball return just to figure out sending the spherical objects back to us. And it looks like it's done that. And Hebert will play that 3-pin and the piece of wood, and oddly enough, it doesn't really do a whole lot for him. That's the 4, 6, 10 for Bryan Hebert now. 7 box or greater. 7 box it will be. That's 32 after 4. Bryan Hebert is 2 for 4 on the headpin this game with 1 split. Greg Sawyer is 2 for 5 on the headpin with 2 splits. Greg Sawyer has almost had a near 1-to-1 ratio of headpin shots to splits. 12 and 11. Bryan Hebert's at least at a 2-to-1, 10 headpin shots to 5 splits. Sometimes bowling in a different style can net different kinds of leaves. Bryan Hebert drops 7, missed the headpin 1, 2, 4. And, oh, it looked good for a second, but the headpin was just hit a little bit full and a little bit too forcefully. That's the 2 and the 4 left for Bryan Hebert. Third ball, sails in the gutter. That'll be an 8 box for 40 and 5 for Bryan Hebert. For the first time this match, Greg Sawyer has a lead. 40 after 5 for Bryan Hebert. Midway through the 4th game, Greg Sawyer 52 and a bonus after 5. Greg Sawyer looking to see if he can get out of here with some points this evening. Might have a chance at it with one of his first leads of the match so far. Greg Sawyer getting warmed up. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, and that's Greg Sawyer and Bryan Hebert bowling this evening down there on the lanes, and I'm Steve Kelly in the broadcast booth. It's great to have you along. Saying hello from Concord, New Hampshire, the capital of New Hampshire. Boutwells Bowling Center on North State Street. Lane 24. Here's Greg Sawyer on the pocket. A light hit and a 5 fill on that spare. It's the 5, 6, 3, 8, 9 for Greg Sawyer. It's a pocket of pins. I think it can go. You just have to hit the frontmost pin, the 3-pin, to get a chance at it. But Greg Sawyer will sail off to the left. So he's at 57 after 5 with that 5 fill in the spare. And that was the shot, so he'll, you know the deal. Miss the second, get the third. That's a textbook example right there. Third ball was a beauty. Too bad it couldn't have been the second one. So Greg Sawyer PGSing it in the 6th, 67 and 6. 4 boxes to go. And he'll drop 5. And he'll leave a Kaleri for his efforts, named after Bob Kaleri, who is a bowler who appeared frequently on WNDS Candlepin Stars and Strikes. And apparently, I wish I could be famous enough someday to get a shot named after me. So, you know, I don't know. Ironically, I believe Paul Grant did once call that shot the Steve Kelly special, because I think there was one match where I was just somehow really on those shots and was making them. But alas, Bob Caleri lays claim to the shot. That's a 9-box for Greg Sawyer, 76 and 7. Boutwells Bowling Center, actually, you know what, I just realized I never talked about this. Boutwells Bowling Center will be hosting the Mixed Worlds tournament. It's a 5-drop for Greg Sawyer. We'll be hosting the Mixed Worlds tournament in late June, I believe. And that's a nice spare for Greg Sawyer. Mopping that mess up. Did an excellent job at taking care of that mess. 86 and a bonus and 8 for Greg Sawyer. So Mixed Worlds, a little like Men's Worlds, but mixed. The multi-gendered version of Worlds. Men's Worlds was at Leda Lanes. Mixed Worlds is going to be here at Boutwells. Be a week-long series of bowling, and it's a lot of bowling, I can tell you that. It's a 6-drop and a split for Greg Sawyer. It's upwards of, well, at a minimum, 9 games of bowling per day if you are in for all 9 games. It's 3 matches. It's basically a full league's worth of bowling in a week, and then playoffs. So if you bowl well, and you continue to bowl well as a team, your reward is more bowling. I was in Worlds in November for Team Massholes, sponsored by Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. And our team made the playoffs for the first time in team history, from my understanding, this past November. So that was enough of an achievement in and of itself to be proud of. That's the 5-7-10 for Greg Sawyer on the first ball. And he'll just hit the piece of wood to the left of the 5 and leave the 5-7-10 uncontested. He's at 101 and 9. Great game with 3 marks. His only 3 marks have been this game. And that will be a 7 for Greg Sawyer and a 108 game 4. And a 4-game total of 355 for Greg Sawyer with that 108. Bryan Hebert with 40 after 5. In the game, he's down by 68, so he needs to have a 68 half to tie, and greater than 68 to, take 2 points for this game. So Bryan Hebert drops 7, missing the headpin to the right. That's the 1, the 2, and the 4 for Bryan Hebert. And Bryan Hebert will take the 4 and leave the 1 and the 2. And that will be an 8-box for Bryan Hebert. That's 48 after 6. It's Bryan Hebert. It's going to be on a pocket shot and a strike. Goodbye. There's a strike for Bryan Hebert. A quick 10. It's 58 and a bonus after 7 with that strike. Might be right back in if you can string a couple of good fills and marks together. Hebert's on the pocket again. Oh, and he drops 7. Great fill so far. It's a good spare leave, a 3, 5, and 9 for Bryan Hebert. Strike fill. Not quite on it, but he'll take a nice 9 fill. Nice 19 box in the 7th. That's 67 and 7 for Bryan Hebert. Missed the spare. It's a shot on the 3-pin for a 10 box, 9 or 10. That will be 9 for Hebert. That will be 76 and 8. Bryan Hebert, max game is currently 136 if you can strike all out here. 108 is the target, or 109 if you want to take 2 points, but Hebert on the headpin again. Splits 5, though. A little full. Spread equal minus the 2. 7, 10, 4, 6, 3. And Hebert will take 3 off the right side and leave the the 4 and the 7. About the best he can hope for that with a split like that. It'll be a 10 for Bryan Hebert, 86 and 9. He is in a must-mark situation now to get to 108 or greater. Greg Sawyer with ever-increasing mark fills, 4, 5, and 6, getting better and better. Hebert's on the pocket, and it was a great offer. But he'll split 4, spread eagle. Two, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. And he'll take the 6 and the 10. 6 down, 4 up. 2, 3, 4, 7 for Bryan Hebert. And that will be an 8 for Mr. Hebert, so not quite a shutout for Bryan Hebert. He has a 94 in the 4th. Greg Sawyer, 108. 361 4-game total for Bryan Hebert, and a 355 4-game total for Greg Sawyer. Bryan Hebert still holds on to the total by 6, but it's a uneasy total. Plus 6 going into the 5th game. That can be a big sway of 4 points in either direction. And it was only a difference of 14 in the 4th game. But Bryan Hebert does have a guaranteed 3 games under his belt, so he has at least 6 points. And it's now time for the 5th and final game of this 5-game series here in Concord, New Hampshire for the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, the final match for both Greg Sawyer and Bryan Hebert in the regular season. And talking a little bit about the playoffs, in the ACST, the rules of the playoffs are slightly different than the regular season. It's not about points in the playoffs, it's about grand total pinfall. So you can have a down game and it won't really matter as long as you can just make up the grand total pinfall. During the regular season, grand total pinfall is only worth 4 points out of each match. But in the playoffs, it's all that matters. And there's a headpin shot for Greg Sawyer to open up the 5th game. It's a 5-drop. Spread eagle minus the 3 this time around. And Sawyer will punch 2. Not really punch 2, he'll take 2. 2, 6, 10. And Greg Sawyer will leave the 2-pin for a 9 box to open up 9 after 1 in the 5th. Greg Sawyer currently 16 for 41 on the headpin with 14 splits. Bryan Hebert 13 for 40 on the headpin with 7 splits. Greg Sawyer has a 17th highest Class E average at 93.5. He'll drop 2 there. Greg Sawyer, last time versus Bryan Hebert, he took 12 points. That was round 2 at a home game here at Boutwells. He had an 81, 85, 105, 100, and 109 with a 480 series. He had 11 spares and 5 tens that match with 14 headpin shots and 9 splits. And currently the 1 diamond and the 8 and the 9 for Greg Sawyer. He punched the left and the right, not really halves, but the sides of the plate. And whatever that ends up being, it ends up becoming a 7-box for Greg Sawyer, 16 after 2. Recently, Greg Sawyer faced Jonathan Reed in round 17. He took 12 points with a 498 series. He threw an 89, a 98, a 123, a 99, and an 89. And he threw a seasonal high single, a 123. He had 1 strike, 8 spares, and 10 tens. This is Greg Sawyer's rookie year. His home house is Boutwells in Concord, New Hampshire, which is where this match is bowled this evening. Busy house Boutwells this evening. All the other bowlers you see around here are bowling a league, and they're actually wrapped around to the other side of the building as well. I want to say they started, they're on lanes 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 all the way to 20. And Sawyer will leave 6 on the plate for the follow-up second ball. And it'll be a nice 10-box, 26 after 3 for Greg Sawyer. In addition to the Mixed Worlds tournament in June, in early June, there's also going to be a couple other ones going on. There's going to be the Can-Ams, just like a America-Canada tournament, but is also going to reside on the same weekend as, but a great spare for Greg Sawyer. Look at that. Great shot. The same weekend is also going to be the Amateur Candlepin Bowlers Tour, the Scotch Doubles Tournament, going to be at Ryan Family Amusements in Millis, Massachusetts. Scotch Doubles, and this is an interesting tournament format in which it's a doubles tournament, but each bowler in the doubles pair bowls every other frame. So that actually is an interesting setup for when one bowler gets a mark. That means the teammate bowler has to be able to show up and fill that mark, and so on and so forth. It's a little like the Baker format, but it's a little more, like onesie-twosie, as opposed to like boxes 1 and 5 and more than, 2 bowlers on a team. So that's a general idea. That'll be the Scotch Doubles Tournament at Millis, Massachusetts. And that's a 6 box for Greg Sawyer. And after 5, he's at 43 with 1 mark. 1 fill on that spare was what he threw. He's currently at a 4.5 game total of 398. He's 16 for 45 in the head pin with 14 splits. It's now Brian Hebert's turn to respond here at Boutwells. And here he is, Brian Hebert. And he'll connect with the 10. Start out, first ball yips. Second ball, a little bit to the right of the head pin, but closer to the head pin, leaves the 1-2-6. And that will end up being an 8 box for Brian Hebert to start out the 5th game here. Brian Hebert took games 1, 2, and 3 with a 95, 91, and 81. 4th game, he had a 94, but Greg Sawyer had a 108. So Greg Sawyer currently has 2 points. Brian Hebert currently has 6. Grand total pinfall will be factored in at the end of this game, and it's an extra 2 points for this game as well if you win the 5th game. 6 drop for Brian Hebert. High-low jack on the 4. 1, 4, 7, 10. High-low jack and a friend. Brian Hebert will make that a traditional high-low jack, plus a piece of wood in the center. It'll be for a 10 box. And here it is. Oh, he'll take 2 of the 3. A great 9 for Brian Hebert. 17 after 2. High-low jack, as was part of the quote-unquote high-low jackpot, part of the Channel 5 Candlepin Bowling with Don Gillis show. Plenty of reruns of that all over YouTube. Kind of always was the closer for the show. And Brian Hebert will drop 8. It's the 4 and the 7. For a spare for Brian Hebert on the 4 and the 7. Goodbye. That's in. The spare is in. 27 and a bonus after 3 for Brian Hebert. On pace with Greg Sawyer and then some. Up by 1 and a bonus. It's Hebert filling a spare, and it's on the pocket. It's looking good. He'll drop 8. He'll split 8. 7 and 8. The piece of wood settling. Brian Hebert trying to orchestrate that piece of wood to stay on and stick around, but it goes into the channel out of play. He's going to have to pick a stick. Or try to trip the 8 in some weird way. Oh, and he almost does it. That was the shot. It comes down to velocity and angle and maybe some spin of the ball. And maybe a little bit of luck, but picking a stick as a consolation is not a bad idea either. That'll be a 9 box for Brian Hebert. That's 44 after 4. Some recent matches I streamed here at Boutwells Bowling Center included myself versus John Lescarbo, Casey McCool versus Mark Welch, a double header involving Chase Abramczyk, Ed Sargent, and oh my goodness, I'm sorry if I'm blanking on the rest of the names, but do check all those out, both on the Atlanta Candlepin Single Store page on Facebook and on YouTube on 3 Ball Spare. It's a 7 drop for Brian Hebert. 5-6-3. Oh, and the ball just tails to the left a little bit, but he got an extra pin. One more pin than I thought he was going to get. Object pin's left standing, the 3 pin. And there's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 54 after 5. And Greg Sawyer's at 43 after 5. Bryan Hebert holding on to the game by 11 and still holds on to the total by 17. Going into the crucial last 2 5 boxes for each bowler. Greg Sawyer currently at 398. Bryan Hebert 415. And this is a close match, so it's a battle for 6 points, and any bowler that can go on a hot streak can take it. So 5th and final game is still live and up for grabs. We got Greg Sawyer down there on lane 24 in the black, and he fires. 6-7 go down. Late falling pin, that's the 1-2-7. Greg Sawyer, 16 headpin shots, 14 splits. This match. Pretty wild. He'll leave the headpin. Again, the object pin left standing. And that'll be a 9 box for Sawyer. That'll be 52 and 6. Here comes Greg Sawyer on the pocket. A light splash, but it was a good splash. Drop of 8. That is the, I want to say the 4 and the 9. Greg Sawyer negotiating the wood down there, waiting for it to settle. It has settled. He fires. It looks kind of good. He touched both pins. Just couldn't quite nudge the 9 pin to its final resting place in the pit behind the plate. And he's going to salvage it for a 10 box. That's 62 and 7 for Greg Sawyer. Bryan Hebert 54 and 5. Greg Sawyer currently 2 for 7 on the headpin. Again, all splits. Bryan Hebert is 16 for 45 in the headpin with 8 splits. Greg Sawyer averaging 4.1 on the first ball. Bryan Hebert averaging 5.3 on the first ball up to this point. There's a 3 drop for Greg Sawyer. And 1 more down for Greg Sawyer. Leaves 6 on the deck. 4 down. A shot with no name. 4 horsemen right side. 7 and 9. He'll connect with the head pin. He'll connect with a 9 pin and leave everything else somehow. That's a 6 box for Greg Sawyer. 68 and 8. So Greg Sawyer, if he marks out with all strikes, can get to 128. And he'll drop 7 to start things out. $136 for Greg Sawyer. And, oh, I thought it was going to be a spare. The ball kind of tailed off right at the last moment. The head pin is the only pin he's shooting at for a 9 or a 10 box. He's going to be all over it for a 10. That's 78 and 9 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. 1 box to go before he finishes his regular ACST season. Currently at 433 and counting. Max game a 108 for Greg Sawyer with 3 strikes. And he'll take 3 off the left side to start out. he'll take some off the right side as well. He's left with the center diamond and the 9. 5 up, 5 down. And that's a 7 box for Greg Sawyer and an 85 fifth game. That's a 5-game total of 440 for Greg Sawyer with 1 mark in the 5th. Final stats for Greg Sawyer, 4 spares, 17 headpin shots for 50 with 15 splits. That is gnarly. He totaled 16 in bonus pins off of Phil, is averaging 4 per mark Phil. His first ball average has been 4.1. That's a story this evening for Greg Sawyer. And now for Bryan Hebert. His final 5 boxes of the evening. He'll take 2 to start out. Before we go, I'd like to say a couple of special thanks to our ACST committee members, including our league commissioner, Danny Finn, our Class E treasurer, Maurice Perry, our statistician, Micah Imperato, the staff at Boutwells Bowling Center, the Dellis family. Always thank you for hosting us and accommodating us, especially when we technically should have been bowling this match at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, but given scheduling circumstances, we're here. I'd like to thank Steve Abodeely for some of the B-roll and photography you've seen during the shots in between everything. Check out his work at stabodeely.com. That's STABODEELY.com. Always like to thank viewers like you for watching, of course. It's always great to have you guys tuning in to the ACST to keep us going in high spirits and to keep the game of Candlepin bowling alive and all that. It's kind of like being on TV. You know how it is. And here's Bryan Hebert to the right of the head pin, takes 3 out. If you want to watch a lot more Candlepin content, there is an overwhelming amount of places you can go fish that out, such as the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and YouTube. There's the Candlepin chat group on Facebook. There's Candlepin Corner on YouTube, at Candlepin Bowling on TikTok, Outrun the Bear on Facebook and Instagram, Alley Chat on YouTube, 8 box for Bryan Hebert, 71 and 7. Bowling with the Gothiers on YouTube. There's Wolfman12395 on YouTube. There's the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube. The Ripping the Rack podcast on YouTube. There's the Approach podcast. There's Tony Levesque on YouTube and Charlie Collins on TikTok. Anybody else? Do let me know in the comments. I'm trying to keep on top of that list, but it's a difficult list to keep on top of. And that's a 4 drop for Bryan Hebert in the 8th. First ball. Averaging 5 on the first ball, Bryan Hebert is. Greg Sawyer averaged 4.1 on the first ball. Hebert will leave the target object pin as the only pin remaining. 9 or 10 box on the head pin. And a 9 box it shall be. That's 80 and 8 for Bryan Hebert.
Bryan, 1 ball. 1 ball for 12 points.
Bryan Hebert can get to 140 if he gets all strikes from here on out. That's the ceiling. Never say never. Hebert on lane 24. On the pocket, on the head pin. 9 go down. The 10 pin is all that's left. His first ball average rises from 5 to 5.1. And it'll just... Bryan Hebert remarking he hates the right side. Some bowlers have difficulty on one side of the lane versus the other. And there we go. That's a 10 box and a... hey, we got to squeeze him in while we still can. A PGS. 1 more before the end of the season here. Yeah, depending on if you're left or right-handed and which leg you slide on, or which foot you slide on, yeah, one side is going to be harder than the other always. And Bryan Hebert will drop 6. Final first ball average of the night is 5.1. 1.0 higher than Greg Sawyer's 4.1. 1, 2, 4, 8 for Bryan Hebert. Kick, trips the head pin, takes the 4, leaves the 2 and the 9. Bryan Hebert does take the 5th game though, and he holds on to the total. That will be 6 more points for Bryan Hebert. And that will be a 9 for Bryan Hebert. End of the regular season for Greg Sawyer and Bryan Hebert. 445 game total for Greg Sawyer. 465 game total for Bryan Hebert with a 99. In the 5th game, Greg Sawyer falls to Bryan Hebert 85 to Hebert's 99. So Bryan Hebert only lost 1 game this evening in the match, and that is it in regulation. So let's take a look at the final stats here. Check everything out. Bryan Hebert will take 12 points to close out his season with a positive note, double-digit victory. Greg Sawyer will take 2. Bryan Hebert 95, 91, 81, 94, 99 for a 5-game total of 460. Greg Sawyer 86, 83, 78, 108, and 85 for a 5-game total of 400. The only game in Greg Sawyer's favor was Game 4. Otherwise, it was Bryan Hebert the whole way down. In total pinfall, it was largely Bryan Hebert's night, almost the entire night, except for one brief moment between boxes 35 and 40 where it crossed over a little bit, but then Bryan Hebert wrested back the total. Greg Sawyer, 4 spares this evening. Bryan Hebert, 2 strikes, 3 spares. 11 tens for Bryan Hebert, 10 tens for Greg Sawyer. Bryan Hebert averaged 92 for the evening, while Greg Sawyer averaged 88. 17 headpin shots even for 50 for both Greg Sawyer and Bryan Hebert. 15 splits for Greg Sawyer, almost double Bryan Hebert's 8. Then in terms of fills, Bryan Hebert totaling 30, Greg Sawyer averaging 16, Bryan Hebert averaging 6.0 pins on the fills, Greg Sawyer averaging 4 on the mark. First ball average for Bryan Hebert, 5.1, while Greg Sawyer was 4.1. So at the end, that will bring Greg Sawyer to a final season of the ACST, 78 and 174. Bryan Hebert will finish 89 and 163. And that is basically going to do it for us from here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. It's been a great season streaming matches to y'all. Want to see plenty more, or go back and watch reruns or whatever? Plenty of places to do that. There's Candlepin Bowling Network, Candlepin Corner, TikTok. There's at Candlepin Bowling on TikTok. There's the Atlanta Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook. There's, of course, my channel, 3 Ball Spare. We've talked about that before, but I'm on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, so check me out there for all kinds of other fun stuff. There's also Candlepin Chat on Facebook for if you want to find out when tournaments are happening or all kinds of stuff like that. There's alleychat.net for the Friday Night Pro League recaps, as well as their YouTube channel. There's classic Candlepin TV shows such as Wolfman12395 and the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube. There's also the Ripping the Rack podcast on YouTube, the Approach podcast on Facebook, Tony Levesque and Charlie Collins on YouTube and TikTok, respectively. And if you want to bowl, I encourage you to go to candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center, largely in New England as well as Eastern Canada. There's even one in Albany, New York. Not all centers are shown on the map, but that is basically the gist of it. If you want to support the game, check out your local Candlepin Bowling Center. Anyways, for Greg Sawyer at Bryan Hebert, I've been Steve Kelly at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. It's been great to have you along, and we'll see you at the next Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. Have a great one, everybody.